Welcome back, focused learners, to another explainer. Today, we're embarking on this incredible thousand-year journey down the river of ancient Bengali literature. Just like a mighty river, a language doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It starts as a tiny trickle, pools together, branches out, and pretty much absorbs everything in its path. Over the next few minutes, we're going to navigate the fascinating twists and turns of how Bengali literature evolved from these very rigid classical origins into a beautifully vibrant emotional cultural identity.
Okay, so let's take a quick look at our map. Today we've got 5 main sections: the birth of Bengali, the Charyapada, folk traditions, Mangalkavya, and Sufi poetry. Think of each of these 5 cultural movements as a brand new tributary, feeding right into the vast, deep ocean of Bengali identity.
All right, let's dive right into Section 1, the source, focusing on the actual birth of Bengali.
Now, to really understand this source, we need to look at how this language initially began to pull together and actually diverge from its incredibly strict classical Sanskrit origins. Basically, early Bengali was kind of the vernacular rebellion. It was the accessible, everyday language breaking away from strict grammar. Just look at this progression. In the 7th century, we start seeing early Bengali phonetic features popping up in the Charyapada poems. By the 10th century, texts like the Cinderbarn inscriptions show the language being used for totally secular, everyday purposes, not just sacred texts. In the 11th century, a visually distinct Bengali script officially develops, and then by the 14th century, the whole language standardizes. It was this amazing, gradual process of simplifying complex sounds, like those tricky retroflex consonants, so it could become an accessible language for the people.
But hey, this language didn't just evolve in a vacuum. The fertile delta of the Ganges wasn't just a physical melting pot, it was a total linguistic one too. You had early Austroasiatic and Tibeto-Burman agrarian communities laying the real groundwork. Then the Mauryan Empire brings in Buddhism, while the Pala Empire is actively sponsoring vernacular translations, and later on, Islamic traders arrive introducing all this rich Persian and Arabic vocabulary. Early Bengal literally absorbed words and beliefs from a wildly diverse array of travelers, empires, and communities that were just passing through the region.
Moving right along to Section 2, the first stream, Charyapada, or Whispers of the Past.
So, jump with me to the 8th through 12th centuries. We're going to explore the very first written texts of this newly formed language. To get the Charyapada, you really have to understand the brilliant minds behind it. Enter the Siddhacharyas. These guys were masters of spiritual practice in Vajrayana Buddhism, which is a highly mystical and esoteric tradition. But what made them so absolutely revolutionary was that they actively rejected rigid institutional dogma. Instead, they sought the divine within everyday human existence. They weren't sitting around writing lofty, unapproachable theology. They were out there crafting mystical poems using vivid, earthy metaphors that regular, everyday people could actually connect with.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how they worked. Just listen to this quote from the eminent Siddhacharya, Saraha. "In the vast sky of consciousness, the clouds of desire disperse, revealing the unblemished sun of wisdom." I mean, wow. They use these incredibly powerful sensory images straight from nature, clouds, the sky, the sun, to explain what are honestly really complex spiritual awakenings. It completely democratized spiritual discourse.
Which brings us to Section 3, the earthy banks and the heartbeat of folk traditions.
Let's steer our boat away from the scholarly monks for a second and pull right up onto the muddy banks of rural Bengal to explore their deep agrarian oral traditions. The absolute crucial point here is that long before literature was widely written down in Bengal, it lived and breathed in the voices of the Kothakars. These were the dynamic storytellers of the region. Think of them as the living, breathing archives of rural Bengali communities, anchoring everyone's collective memory right around the evening fires. They seamlessly wove myth, history, and daily life together to convey vital moral lessons to the community.
There's this perfect example of this oral efficiency in a classic Bengali proverb, Danar Pori Manush Jani, which translates to, "The wealth of a person is to be known through their character." In just a handful of words, oral traditions like this efficiently pass down essential communal values and deep wisdom across entire generations.
And let me tell you, this oral landscape was incredibly rich and inclusive. It featured folk tales of clever heroes outwitting greedy landlords, the ball songs of wandering minstrels, and rhythmic songs deeply tied to the agricultural harvest. But I want you to specifically notice the Pata singers. These are women who narrated stories through song while displaying these beautifully painted scrolls. It's just a fantastic example of the vital agency of women, strongly asserting their voices and experiences through community art.
Okay, on to Section 4, the raging currents, Mangalkavya, devotion and desire.
Moving chronologically into the 14th century, the Bhakti movement caused the currents of religion and romance to spectacularly collide. Notice this fascinating duality between human desire and divine devotion. Poets of this era, like the legendary Bhairo Chandis, intentionally blurred these lines. He made the passionate longing for a romantic beloved completely mirror the soul's desperate search for God. The emotional pain of being separated from a lover, it became the exact same feeling as the spiritual pain of being separated from the divine.
And remember, this tradition wasn't just a quiet, solitary read in a corner. It was ecstatic. Read this excerpt with me. With palms held high against the azure sky, the faithful chant and sing, their voices a river flowing. You can almost hear it, right? The Mangalkavya tradition pulled the listener directly into an intense musical fervor. It was highly, highly participatory.
But it really begs the question, doesn't it? How do you perfectly merge earthly longing with the divine? How do you take regular human desire and elevate it to ultimate spiritual truth? Well, that question hooks us directly into the final, massive cultural shift that forever altered Bengali literature.
And that brings us to our final stop, Section 5, the melodic confluence, Sufi poetry.
The arrival of Islam in Bengal marked this truly profound synthesis of Middle Eastern mysticism and local folk traditions. And the ultimate embodiment of this cultural convergence were the bauls. These wandering minstrels seamlessly synthesized Hindu bhakti devotion and Islamic Sufi mysticism into a singular musical expression of experiential divine love. They proved, once and for all, that true devotion completely transcends rigid institutional boundaries. They were seeking the universal spirit, plain and simple.
To really grasp their mindset, consider this famous quote by the celebrated Sufi philosopher Lalande Shah. "Don't look at the outward form, for it is the spirit you should seek." In a society that was so often divided by strict social and religious lines, Lalande Shah's words were a massive, revolutionary push for a universal spirituality. He was asking us to see the divine spark in absolutely everyone.
This cultural exchange absolutely gifted the Bengali language with entirely new structural frameworks. We see the introduction of the ghazal with its sweeping melodic rhythm, the Mansingh poetic style, and a massive infusion of Persian and Arabic vocabulary that created a much richer, multi-layered lexicon. Plus, it brought a brand new philosophical focus on the annihilation of the self, which is basically letting go of your ego so you can merge fully with the divine.
So, if we have to distill this entire 1,000-year river journey into just one vital takeaway, it's this: love, whether it's human or celestial, is an ever-evolving force. Across empires, across religions, and across centuries, the true core anchor of ancient Bengali literature has always been the transformative power of love. It's the current that keeps the river flowing.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with something to ponder. What ancient whispers are still shaping the way you love and seek meaning today? I challenge you to think about how these ancient themes of unrequited love, of seeking connection, and of feeling cosmically insignificant actually echo in your own modern life. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey today, Focus Learners. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.